Today we're going to be taking a look at 5 simple tricks to make your towns look a bit more unique and a bit more realistic without losing that vanilla vibe. Alright, let's jump straight into this. Tip 1 and 2 sort of go together. Planning your streets and your zones. We're going to go with 2 basic templates here, towns and cities. So first we'll do the town template, which can obviously look endless different ways. Creativity, is kind of your limit, but ideally in a small town, I'll have about 8 to 12 structures or 12 to 18 in a larger one. And we're only going to have to consider a few zones with these towns or smaller locations. And those are residential, commercial, and park zones if there's enough room. So long as you keep a ratio of about 50-50 in terms of residential compared to commercial, you should be fine. Maybe bring those down and add 20% space for parks if you've got enough space. Towns typically have pretty varied splits between the commercial and residential zones, so there's really no wrong way to lay these things down in a small town. Mix and mash, go half and half, it doesn't really matter. All right, so this town's not quite finished yet, but I'm just going to scribble over top of it and kind of show you what my thinking was here. So I've got my residential zones here and here, with pretty much all of the commercial entities being in the center of the town, with this road being the noisiest. So I've created some sound block in this area and this area, which can also serve as parkland. In addition, I've got small bits of trees here, here, and some park here. So there's just a quick example of one of the ways I might utilize this template. Next, we've got our city template, and there's going to be a couple more things to consider here, but overall the template is still super simple. We'll likely want 14 to 28 structures, residential, commercial, and park zones just like before, but we're also going to introduce an industrial zone now. Typically in cities where there's a lot more traffic and noise, you'll see industrial and commercial zones near the highway, where there's already naturally a lot of noise. The residential zones, however, will be outside the city typically, or furthest from the industrial zone and highway. Oftentimes when you do see residential zones near highways, there are sound blocks or walls present, or you'll see a small area of parkland or trees to diffuse that sound a bit. In addition, it's pretty rare to see parkland inside or between industrial zones, but you do very commonly see them mixed around commercial and residential zones. And by introducing all the different zones, we might get a little bit caught up in trying to make things too realistic, so you'll have to really find a nice balance between real and vanilla. Now this here would be an example of my city template and how I would utilize this. So let's start off with our industrial zone, which is pretty much everything on this side of the freeway. Our residential zone will probably be along this outer wall, maybe in this area here. And our commercial entities will mix partially into the industrial zone and go up here to sit alongside the residential. Lastly, we've got our park zones, which you can clearly see kind of sparse throughout the city. We'll probably add a few into this residential area as well. And we have a lifted freeway. So in this scenario, we probably wouldn't need as much sound block for this area because it's already lifted up. And we've got the trees down here and down here to make sure that we've got sound diffusion. So I feel like this fits the template pretty good and looks pretty realistic. But again, creativity, your own mindset is kind of the limit. So have fun and make it your own. A minor tip that we're not really going to count on the list. If you've ever played Cities, SimCity, or any other decent city building game, try to imagine setting up a functioning town and what all you would need, where the plumbing would need to go, where the electricity would need to go. Again, this might take you towards something a little bit too realistic in some scenarios, so be mindful of that. Step number 3. Take a photographer's mindset when setting up the entryways to any city that you would consider a main entryway. These are the areas that players are going to see the most, so make sure that you pan your camera through these areas and make adjustments until you can get yourself a nice photograph for the entryway of that town. It doesn't have to be the most beautiful photo ever, but you do want it to at least give the impression and vibe of the town that the player is entering, almost as if to tell a story for the location. Each town can feel vastly different upon entry, even if everything else is the same, just by making a few tweaks to the first things they see. Tip number 4, make sure that each town has a purpose. Can you get police spawns, medical spawns? Can you fill up your gas tanks here, or maybe find a supply for food? You'll likely want to have a good balance of each type of commercial entity in your town, but you also want to emphasize certain loot types within a location. Every town could have medical locations, for instance, but by giving only a single town a large hospital, we've now created a loot specialty for that location. Your main location and loot emphasis can also be used to play into tip number 3. Include some portion of those main features in the entryway to your city so that the player coming in might know this is a great place to find this particular type of loot spawn. Tip number 5, color palette. Materials on the ground, details, resources, and even palettes on objects themselves can make a massive difference on how unique a town feels. Hand painting your materials, choosing where those details pop out, where those trees go, and even color coding some buildings can make two very similar towns feel very different. There are really endless ways to play with colors. There might be limitations if you can't create your own assets, but there are still a lot of different colors available for each object in the game. So have some fun and tinker with that stuff as much as you can. It's gonna pay off in the end. And a minor tip regarding color that we won't include on the list. Make sure that your monitor settings and desktop color settings are at a reasonable level or default level. This will ensure that whatever the players are seeing is a closer representation of what you actually create. If you're too saturated on your end, you could have an end result that's very, very bland to the viewing player. Or if you're like me and you tend to run a more desaturated look from the start, you could end up with an over-bright, over-blooming situation like I had in Hawaii. Just something to keep in mind. All right, everyone, those are my 5 simple steps to making more realistic towns without losing those vanilla vibes. I hope you found the video useful or at least entertaining. As usual, if you did, smash that like button, share the video around, and consider hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already. I'll throw some links down below to our website and to my Instagram where I post early sneak peeks of upcoming maps. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back in a few days with another random unturned video. G2M out. Hey guys, I just wanted to throw a quick edit in at the end here. I wanted to give a shout out to the Candyland map creators, which I highlighted in the color palette section of the video. It's extremely unique work. It's very well done. It looks like there's a lot of custom content that took them ages to create. So I'm going to throw a workshop link to their work down below, and you guys should definitely give it a click. Go give it some love. Let them know what you think about it, because it's definitely one of the most unique things I've seen. All right, you guys have a great day, and we'll be back soon.